My son, Leo, had learned to make himself small, a skill no 5-year-old should ever have to master. He was folded into the corner of the worn armchair, his small hands clutching a worn-out toy car, refusing to meet my eyes. His dinner sat on the end table, a deliberate insult from my father. A single, dry cracker and a glass of lukewarm tap water. If he wants to eat, he has to earn it, my dad had declared earlier, his voice cold. My mom's faint, cruel smirk twisted her lips. In silent agreement, we were only supposed to be here for a month while our new apartment was being prepared. I had promised Leo it would be an adventure, a little holiday with his grandparents, but as I watched him retreat further into himself, I knew I had lied. This wasn't an adventure, it was a punishment. Here is a new main part for your script, written in the requested style and format. My parents never laid a hand on me. Their cruelty was cleaner, more refined. It lived in the architecture of their home, in the rules that were never spoken but always enforced. Our house wasn't a home, it was a showroom. White carpets you couldn't walk on with shoes, glass tables that couldn't hold fingerprints, and a silence so profound it felt like a fifth person lived there, one who hated noise and joy in equal measure. They called their control high standards and their emotional distance teaching self-reliance. When I brought my son Leo home, I knew it would be difficult. I just didn't understand that their version of difficult was my version of soul-crushing. Leo was for. He was a whirlwind of laughter, questions, and sticky fingers. To my parents, he was a walking, talking violation of their peace. Could you please ask him to use his indoor voice? My mother would say, even when he was whispering, Clara, a child's toys belong in his room, not scattered where people can see them. My father would add, nudging a stray Lego block with his shoe, as if it were a dead insect. They never bought him a gift. Instead, they made investments in me. For my 23rd birthday, they bought me a sleek, expensive laptop. So you can finish your online courses, my father announced. And it's powerful enough to manage our finances properly. No more excuses for mistakes. For 2 years, that laptop became my prison. I spent my nights on it, not studying, but tracking their stock portfolio, automating their bill payments, and digitizing 2 decades of their disorganized paperwork. I was their unpaid financial manager, their tech support, their secretary. In return, Leo and I were granted lodging in their silent, sterile house, always reminded of our status as dependents. It's the least you can do, my mother would sigh. Since we're providing you with so much, the breaking point didn't come with a shout, but with a cough. Leo came down with a vicious flu. His fever spiked to 103, and his little body was racked with shivers and a deep, wet cough that echoed in the cavernous silence of the house. I was terrified. I'm taking him to urgent care, I told my mother, my voice trembling. She didn't look up from her newspaper. Don't be so dramatic, Clara. It's a cold, give him some tea. You're coddling him. My father chimed in from the living room, and I hope you have the money for that. Doctors don't work for free, you know. Besides, his coughing is making it impossible to hear the television. I stood there, frozen, clutching my sick child. They were more concerned with their evening's entertainment than their grandson's health. That night, I held Leo in my arms in my small, cold bedroom, listening to his ragged breaths. He whimpered in his sleep, and every sound felt like a judgment on me for keeping him there, in a place where his suffering was an inconvenience. I had normalized their behavior for myself. I had accepted their coldness as my price of admission, but I forgot that tolerable for me meant barely surviving for my son. In that moment, watching him fight for breath in a house devoid of warmth, something inside me didn't just snap, it turned to steel. I didn't fight, I didn't argue. The next day, I simply agreed with them. You're right, I said with a placid smile. It's just a cold, we'll rest here. For 2 days, I nursed Leo in my room, and at night, after they went to sleep, I executed my plan. I sat at that laptop, their investment, and I began to dismantle the digital life I had so carefully constructed for them. I logged into every account, banking, utilities, investments, credit cards. I didn't steal a penny. I just changed every password to a complex, randomly generated string of characters. I wrote none of them down. Then, I backed up my own files, Leo's baby pictures, my resume, my half-finished coursework, onto a tiny USB drive. My final act was to navigate to the system settings and click Restore to Factory Defaults. I watched as the progress bar slowly erased 2 years of my unpaid labor. I left the laptop on the dining room table with a simple, typed note. Thank you for the computer. It seems to have crashed. I'm sure you can get it fixed. Then, with Leo asleep in my arms, I took my purse, his diaper bag, and one box of his toys, and walked out the front door into the pre-dawn quiet. I didn't close it loudly. I just let it click shut behind us. The softest, most powerful sound I had ever made. The first week was the hardest. We stayed on the couch of a kind friend from high school, and I spent every waking hour making calls, searching for jobs, and looking for an apartment we could afford. I had a few $100s, saved from the freelance writing I did in secret, money my parents didn't know existed. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We found a tiny studio apartment above a laundromat. The air always smelled of fabric softener, and the floor tilted slightly to the left, but it was a haven. The first night, Leo tipped over a box of his blocks, and they scattered across the floor with a magnificent crash. I saw him freeze, his eyes wide, waiting for the reprimand. That was a loud one, I said, grinning. Let's build the tallest tower in the world. He stared at me for a second. Then a slow, glorious smile spread across his face. He laughed, a loud, genuine belly laugh, and in that moment, I felt a kind of wealth my parents' stock portfolio could never measure. I put the bookkeeping skills my father had forced upon me to good use. I found a remote, part-time job managing the books for a local bakery. The owner, a woman named Maria, paid me on time, thanked me for my work, and always sent me home with a bag of day-old pastries for Leo. We built a life from these small kindnesses. We went to the library for story time, where Leo made friends, and I connected with other mothers. They didn't see me as a failure or a burden. They saw me as one of them. We ate macaroni and cheese for dinner on the floor of our apartment and called it an indoor picnic. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving in the quiet, simple joy of being left alone. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. About 3 months after I left, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was my mother. Her voice was thin and tight with a fury she wasn't bothering to conceal. Clara, what did you do? She hissed. There was no hello, no how are you. We can't get into the bank accounts. The mortgage payment is late. The investment company says the portfolio is locked. What are the passwords? I took a breath, listening to the hum of the dryers from the laundromat below. I don't recall, Mother, I said. My voice even, you were right. I needed to learn to be self-reliant. It sounds like you do too. Before she could unleash the tirade I knew was coming, I said, I have to go. Leo needs help building his fort. I hung up and immediately blocked her number, then my father's. The fallout came to me in whispers from my cousin Sarah, the only family member who had checked in on me without judgment. My parents, she said, were in a state of utter panic. They had to hire a forensic accountant for an fee to try and regain access to their own money. They had been hit with late fees on every single bill. Their perfect credit score was ruined. They told everyone in the family that I was an ungrateful, vindictive child who had maliciously stolen their financial identity. But Sarah said something that healed a part of me I didn't know was still wounded. Nobody believes them. Clara, she said softly, we all saw how they treated you. We just never had the guts to say anything. We're all so proud of you for getting out. I never sent them an invoice. I never wrote a scathing letter. My revenge wasn't in action, it was in absence. My victory was the peace in my small apartment. It was in Leo's freedom to be a child. A year after we left, I got a small promotion at the bakery. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with a small balcony where I grew tomatoes in a pot. One evening, I was watching Leo at our little kitchen table. He was drawing with his crayons, tongue stuck out in concentration. He held up the finished picture for me to see. It was a drawing of 2 stick figures, one big and one small, standing in front of a little house with a crooked door. Over the top, he had drawn a giant, smiling sun. That's us, Mommy, he said proudly. That's our home. I took the picture from his hands, my eyes blurring with tears, and I knew I wouldn't trade that piece of paper for all the money in their inaccessible bank accounts. I had finally given my son a home where the silence was peaceful, not punishing. I went and found a thumbtack and pinned his drawing to the wall. It was the only piece of art we needed. Today, Leo is 7. He makes up songs about dinosaurs and sings them at the top of his lungs. The other day, he left his art supplies scattered across our kitchen table and asked, "Is this mess okay?" "A happy mess is always okay here," I told him. "It means we're living." He doesn't remember the sterile house where his toys had to be hidden, where his voice was a crime. But I do. Our home is covered in his joyful, messy drawings. There are no passwords to this happiness, no logins required for this love. I left them with their perfect, empty rooms and the cold silence they worshipped.